fun that series has had, eh? In spite of all the different actors and directors that have... I can't do this. This was a terrible idea. My accent is horrible. I hate wearing suits. What the hell was I thinking? It's a stupid idea. Stupid! Get the stuff off me! Much better. Anyway, James Bond.
Who would have thought that James Bond would still be going strong more than 50 years after the first James Bond novel was published, and 40 years after the first movie was released? Every film since and including GoldenEye has raked in more than $300 million worldwide, and more than $100 million in the US alone. And why not? Every movie has him romancing beautiful women, shooting people, and blowing shit up. Truly, there's nothing more American than this British spy.
Just go with it. The point is that with all these movies and novels and books, commercialism was bound to catch up with the series and demand more! 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 No, not that more!
Movies and books not being enough, there were also comic strips and, eventually, tie-in comics accompanying several of the movies. But since I'm not Linkara, this was all an elaborate waste of time because I am really not looking forward to this game.
Here's the long and the short of it. 2 years after License to Kill came out, and while GoldenEye was still stuck in production purgatory, a cartoon came out called James Bond Jr.
James Bond Jr.
From the same American production group that made cartoons for Toxic Avenger and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, we got James Bond Jr. in 1991. In it, James Bond's nephew attends...
Wait. Why is he called James Bond Jr. if he's actually his nephew? Actually, I think I know why. It's because James Bond Jr. is way more catchy than James Bond's nephew.
James Bond Jr. attends a prep school called Warfield Academy, where several other prominent figures from the Bond series have sent their kids, including Q's grandson IQ, Felix Leiter's son Gordon, and that's about it. Everyone else is just related to the people running the school, or a throwaway comic relief character. To sum up almost every episode, a random Bond villain or relative of a Bond villain shows up, hatches a plan, and Bond Jr. ruins it. This show was a guilty pleasure, and it lasted 65 episodes over about 3 months before getting cancelled.
I suspect I deserved it.
It was a very simplistic show with poorly written characters even by kids' show standards, which if I were to show you more than a minute of it, my stereotype counter might explode. Still, the show managed to get Corey Burton of all people to voice the lead, who you might remember as both Spike and Shockwave from the Transformers cartoon. The little things like being cancelled didn't stop the James Bond Jr. toy line or comics from coming out.
Nor did it stop Grey Matter from making an NES game of the cartoon, as well as what would become their first SNES game, which came out a year after the show was cancelled. But clearly it went over so well that they made millions of these cartridges, and the market got so diluted with them that that's why I only paid $1.49 for this, right?
In the NES, and particularly the SNES days, there were 3 telltale signs that a game was probably going to suck from the moment you turned it on. 1. A solid color background title card. 2. Crappy MIDI music that barely resembles its source material and sounds like it was put together in Mario Paint Composer. And 3. The credits appearing immediately after said title card. With my faith in this game already waning, I'm greeted by the password screen. Interesting design choice. Since it's only 4 digits long, you can try guessing a password, but you'll most likely just end up at the first level. The game stays true to the cartoon in that each level is a separate episode that has nothing to do with any other part of the game, so I'll give them credit for staying true to the laziness of the source material. However, Grey Matter also made several cuts to the cast when making this.
In fact, let's go over how many characters from the show aren't in the SNES game. And there you go. That's 2/3 of the cast cut, including all the most recognizable Bond villains, plus 3 supporting protagonists. And you know what? I don't care if Oddjob did look like a cross between a fruit roll-up and Run DMC in that show. You do not cut him! He cuts you.
If you're looking for a short and sweet summary of everything that's wrong with this game, I've got 2 words for you. Whether it's glitches or simply poor decisions on the game's design, bad programming is what dooms James Bond Jr. literally from the beginning, to the point where the only way I can properly encapsulate all of this game's problems is to go through it stage by stage. The first stage consists of jumping up a couple of platforms and approaching the bad guy before he runs away. A stage so short it might as well not exist. There are 2 things wrong with it though. If you roll to the left and back to the right, the villain will shift forward and backward from where he was standing. And if you roll so James ends up behind the pillar, the villain disappears and the stage never ends. Instead, James's only course of action is to quite literally descend into madness.
Our house in the middle of our street.
No, the other kind of madness! The kind where there are random bits of background everywhere, platforms twisting and floating randomly, clusters of power-ups that change at random, dead ends that close in on James at random, and traps that can kill him from a good 10 feet away. And it's never the same every time the glitch gets triggered.
You know what, though? This is the fun part of the game. The programming glitch, which makes the level impossible to beat, and forces the player to die to keep playing, which there isn't always a way to do that, is the fun part. James Bond Sr. would be so proud.
I wish I were like him.
Don't we all?
The next stage introduces side-scrolling shooting sequences, with this one being in a helicopter. It has some of the usual problems people associate with these sequences, such as enemies getting behind the helicopter and not being able to hit them, or how holding the fire button does nothing so it needs to be rapidly tapped for the majority of the stage, which becomes a pain in the ass with constantly switching from firing missiles to dropping bombs. The true pain is the level itself though. It simply doesn't end. The screen scrolls so slowly, and the levels are so long that these sections become tests of endurance and concentration more than anything else. The missiles that drop shrapnel where they explode help a bit, but the shield might as well not exist, as it takes the form of 3 rotating spheres that spin so far out from the craft they catch on enemies and shots that otherwise wouldn't come close to hitting. Oh, and the helicopter goes down in flames if you so much as brush a tree branch. It really shouldn't have surprised me when someone gave me the password to bypass this section when I first agreed to make this video.
And I was dumb enough to ignore that act of faith and beat the level the old-fashioned way.
After almost every stage, there's a password and a little exchange between the villain or one of his henchmen and Bond, which to me just looks awkward. Is it necessary to animate the mouths for all these sequences? I don't even look at their dialogue, because in my head everyone's just going meh, 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 meh. The following stage is where things really start to go downhill. James has a high vertical leap, but he floats for a moment before falling, which makes platforming harder than it should be, particularly since most of the spaces he needs to jump to are only slightly wider than his character sprite, which runs exactly the way you'd expect a stereotypical girly British man would. James can defend himself with a punch and a kick, but the kick somehow has less range than the punch, and neither can be used while ducking. The one upshot to the kick is that pressing kick while running causes James to do his best Liu Kang impression. Though this kick is only very useful against targets above and in front of him. Against ground units he needs to stand right next to them, and in that case, he should just use the punch. Besides, there's always the chance that... What? How did he... No. No!
Damn you, Liu Kang!
The enemies themselves aren't necessarily dangerous at first, so much as they are annoying. The snakes in particular are a bitch to deal with, because the only way to kill them is to lob a grenade at them. That makes sense, right? Getting through snakes by blowing them up? I never thought I'd see a game borrow a page from the Dirty Harry NES game made it... Wait a minute, Grey Matter made that game too!
What is Grey Matter's fetish with blowing up snakes? Oh, be right back. What?
Actually, the grenades are by far the most useful weapon, if for no other reason than because they tend to show up way more than ammo for the dart gun. Unfortunately, someone decided that after each break in a platforming section, the grenade should reset to 10. By this point, you'll probably have around 20 or more, and James is suddenly losing a dozen grenades for no reason serves to do little more than piss off the player for bothering to collect them. There are also gadgets IQ comes up with to make the levels easier, such as the Snake Charmer for this stage, but these are scattered throughout the area, which tells me that IQ thought it would be more efficient to go to the villains' hideouts, scatter gadgets all over the level, and come back to James instead of just giving them to James before the mission when he's describing what they do.
And this ring fires a laser that can cut through solid steel.
Add in that the spear chuckers will sometimes have a delayed reaction to some of James's attacks, bomb monkeys can hit you from just about anywhere except directly below them, the perspective prevents seeing what's more than 8 feet below James, hit detection tends to be sketchy at best, and the coup de grace floor spikes, all spread across 3 separate platforming sections where if you run out of lives, you have to do all of them over again, and you've got a slew of reasons that this game shouldn't be on $5 gaming, so much as it should be on Until We Win. The best thing to do in these sections is find a way to get a 1-up. These not only add extra lives, but also completely refill James's health, and if you die and start over, the 1-up comes back and can be collected again. Of course, sometimes these 1-ups are placed just out of reach intentionally to lure James into a trap or an instant death pit. Yet another problem is the roll move. Hitting diagonally down and to the left or right causes James to do a roll in either direction. This becomes a problem in these sections as James almost always needs to duck whatever's being thrown or shot at him, and if you're not coming to a complete stop and pressing straight down, James will roll into the enemy and take damage.
This stupid game is harder than I thought!
For all I've said about the stages themselves, the boss fights are complete and utter letdowns. With rare exceptions, if James has more than 1 heart left by the time he gets to the boss, he can revert to retard logic and spam a weapon until the boss dies because the boss's moves are pretty easy to avoid and they somehow have less health than he does. Skullcap's ship at the end of the first flying section lowers the handicap even further by shooting projectiles that can be destroyed by missile fire, making the best strategy for defeating him spamming the fire button while flying directly in his line of fire. And so with villain number 1 defeated, James returns home to the other protagonists that didn't get cut by the developers. And there was much rejoicing. In the next level, another villain is trying to steal Leonardo da Vinci's submarine, which is hidden in Italy's sewers so he can shoot nuclear missiles out of it.
I know, just go with it.
And thus begins yet another painful side-scrolling sequence, this time in a boat.
This stage. This... God damn! I forgot to check the mail. Hold on. Who the hell sent me a copy of Red Steel 2? Oh, right, the boat stage.
This level doesn't look like it's that bad, especially since the AI is so stupid at points it will ram itself into the wall. However, there are several things about this stage that make me hate humanity. For one, the boat is weak as hell. It can only fire shots forward, unlike the helicopter which could also drop bombs. There are no shields in this section, so hitting anything is almost always a death sentence. Except for bombs dropped by passing aircraft which apparently do nothing. Despite the AI being utterly retarded, enemy boats can spawn behind James, and if they touch his boat, he'll get stuck on them and fly forward at warp speed until he hits either a jump or a wall, which aside from one open section, is a death sentence.
Oh shit!
This also happens if James lands on top of them, which makes me question how landing on top of an enemy boat doesn't smash them into the floor of the channel.
Actually, if I keep questioning every break in logic in this game, this video will never end, so let's just move on.
And just to piss off the player even more, there are jumps over land that require holding forward to go through as fast as possible to clear them, with no indication of what's on the other side. In one section though, doing this causes the boat to land in the side of a wall. How are you supposed to know it's there or how fast you should go? You're not. You'll only know it's there when it's already killed you, which is the case for many, many things from this point on, and Infinite Continues does nothing to make this any more bearable.
And now, the sewer level.
This is where James's big, awkward character sprite becomes a major handicap, as the sewers of Italy were apparently booby-trapped by Leonardo da Vinci to protect his submarine, neither of which I am going to question.
And before you ask, no, none of the traps look like this.
Most of the traps involve spikes that come out of the floor like in the temple, only this time, they aren't visible until they already stab through the floor the first time. Then there are poison gas clouds, which take off 3 hit points, more than half of James's health if they're touched. But I shouldn't be complaining too much. I mean, at least there's not— Oh, come on! I'm literally being bitch-slapped by the floor!
We're gonna make America skinny again, one slap at a time.
And in case you couldn't guess it already, yes, falling in the sewage is instant death. Either Italian shit poison, or James is just that much of a wuss.
Oh dear, I've ruined my 90s shoes. Oh!
This is the point where the becomes something to rage quit over, as scum agents will shoot James before they're even on screen, and James won't be able to hit them. In other words, enemies can attack from off-screen, and James can't do anything about it.
That's just cheap!
Unlike the last platforming section, the gadget from IQ is absolutely essential to get through this stage. It's a grenade that freezes liquid so James can walk on it, and IQ says it doesn't last long. But he never tells you how long it does last, which is about 4 seconds. And if you use them too quickly, they'll run out before James reaches a watery pit which is impossible to cross without them. This is the same section in which James needs to get past suddenly appearing waves that slam into walls, usually pushing him backwards. This and the poison gas clouds are the times where abusing the roll is the best way to get past most obstacles. And so James reaches the most ill-conceived boss of the game, Da Vinci's missile-launching submarine. The catch to the boss is that if you stand on the left side of the screen, Cortex won't be able to hit you. At all. You just stand to the left and lob grenades so they hit the hatch. Forget— This is just plain boring. After that, James decides to launch an attack on Scum What?
Question. When did James Bond Jr. ever attack Scum headquarters in the show? Answer, he didn't. This is just a cheap ploy to have an ending for this game.
Also, IQ makes it very clear that this is James's plan. How does James know that Scum HQ is in Antarctica? Why didn't we see him discover this? Why does IQ think a direct attack on such a powerful crime operation in such harsh environmental conditions by one person is a good idea? Why does he bother mentioning the insulating jacket when it never appears in the following levels?
I thought I told you to stop asking so many questions.
Kiss my ass guy from Final Fight whose name I can never remember.
This starts off with the third and thankfully final flying section, in which James is in a jet and facing waves of enemies at a time instead of individual ships. This isn't so bad when you get the tri-beam, but there's a slight problem with that. IQ never gives it to you, like he does with all the other items. Now you might be wondering, where is it? Well, do you see that gray box that randomly appears on the screen, can be hit by gunfire, looks nothing like an item pickup, and will destroy your shield if you get too close to it? That's the tri-beam!
That's just cheap! Ha-ha!
Sometimes you won't even need it though. There are times when James will get shot down, particularly against the yellow fighter, and he'll respawn ahead of where he died to encounter a scum airship? Where the hell did they get that? But there's also the risk of this happening. Yes, you can spawn into a vast, never-ending void of emptiness from which nothing can enter or escape, and the only thing you can do about it is resetting the game.
I should probably be more pissed off about this, but at this point I'm just happy it didn't happen at the final boss.
What does happen is ice, ice, and more ice, which is exactly what a game with questionable controls and floaty jumping mechanics needs. Oh hey, James gained the ability to survive having a giant swinging axe blade split through his skull. Maybe all the gel he puts in his hair acts as a helmet. The being shot from off-screen problem from the previous platforming sections is back with a vengeance, from both scum agents and laser turrets, to the point where the best way to go through this level is to continuously duck after taking 2 or 3 steps. Then again, that assumes it's not a ground turret which will blast James in the shin. Combined with icicles falling from the ceiling which respawn off-screen, this last section is entirely about memorization and being paranoid about what you can't see 10 feet in front of you.
And then the boss shows up.
Finally, James finds Scumlord, who proceeds to attack him with a giant floating
Both.
This thing is easy as hell to avoid, either by rolling out of the way or just running to the other side of the screen. Assuming that you didn't completely forget about grabbing the laser ring, the ball will be destroyed and Scumlord will jump down from his perch.
And here's where the game flat out tells you it was made for the most vapid, brainless human beings to come in contact with the James Bond Jr. franchise.
When you first try to shoot Scumlord, he ducks your shots as he slowly shuffles sideways to sadistically shank you.
Smart people would think that if he ducks the first couple shots, that's probably not the way to kill him, and you would try something else. Retard logic says that if he ducks the first couple shots, just keep shooting. And you know what? That works!
After firing 2 shots, Scumlord will stand up and get hit by the 3rd. If you're shooting the laser ring, he'll die in 3 hits, way before he can even come close to hitting James. So Scum Headquarters motion tweens him to the ground, or the ocean, I can't really tell. Either way, James is apparently up to his chest in it, and the title screen appears.
This game, I can hardly put it into words. It's like a black hole of fun. This game takes the joy that you would originally derive from playing video games right out of you. And it gets to the point where simply saying, I beat James Bond Jr., it's not an accomplishment. It just makes you feel ashamed. Not only for saying it, but for actually doing it.
Even for fans of James Bond Jr., this boils down to a game loosely based on the show with most of the main characters and some of the less noteworthy villains pretending to be a Bond movie instead of being like the Bond Jr. show. None of James's friends help him in the field like on the show, the villains aren't taken down in any remotely clever way, and Trevor Noseworthy isn't in this game, so there's not even the benefit of laughing at him for being a dick and karma biting him in the ass.
Even for $1.49, I would at least expect the game to be able to function properly, but nope, Gray Matter couldn't get that right either. And it's no wonder that officially, they don't exist anymore. They merged with a company under Activision in 2005, which... Wait, which company was that again? Oh, that's right, they merged with Treyarch. Hey, have fun making the same 3 games over and over until you die, guys. I'm gonna go to the thrift store and see what I can find for $5. I mean, can't be much worse than this.
No mercy. Mercy is for the weak. Just in preparation. The aim of my secret weapon. Mercy. Just in preparation.